Well, good morning, everyone. We want to make a start on time. My name is Emric Sohal. I'm a professor in the Department of Management at Monash University in the Monash Business School. Thank you very much for joining us today for this seminar, starting the journey to being part of the circular economy. Before we start, acknowledgement to country. We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia, and especially the people of the Kulin nations on which Monash University is based. We recognize their continuing connection to land, waters, and culture, and we pay our respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. Again, thank you very much for joining us today, this 1-hour seminar, the aim of which is to raise awareness of the importance of circular economy, share experiences and knowledge on how to get started, awareness of what support is available, and talk briefly about the local research that is currently underway. We have a fantastic lineup of speakers. Mr. Gavin Smith from Bosch Australia, Mr. Steve Morris, Close the Loop, Angela Stubbs, representing City of Kingston, Mr. Cameron Mckenzie, the CEO of Aspire, Sandra George from the City of Greater Dandenong, and manages the Southeast Business Network and Southeast Melbourne Manufacturers Alliance, and Mr. Travis Hatton from Sustainability Victoria. So thank you again. We'll get started. We've got a lot to go through. So over to you, Gavin, who is the Managing Director of Robert Bosch Australia, an alumni of Monash University, and has been with Robert Bosch Australia for many years now. Thank you, Gavin. Over to you.
Thank you, Emric. Thanks for the introduction. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to break with tradition this morning and not give you a bunch of PowerPoint slides. So you get to look at my face instead of some colorful slides, perhaps. So sorry for that. But I'd like this to be more of a conversation than a presentation. And I guess most of you who have joined in today will know the Bosch Group for something. You'll either have been exposed to our company because of our consumer products or for our automotive goods. Maybe you work in industry and know us for factory automation and drives and controls, or maybe you're in the building and energy sector and you know us for security, fire protection, and access control and professional sound. The Bosch Group, to put it in context, is an industrial giant. We are, by any standard, one of the world's largest firms, ranking in the top 100. We have some 400,000 people around the globe. We are 136 years old, and we're a market leader in most, if not all, of what we do. We generate revenues globally of 130 billion. So you can imagine, for a company of that size, the topic of circular economy is a really important one because we have such a big impact. Even more so when you think that the Bosch Group for 136 years has been a market leader in bringing to market the systems that are used to make internal combustion engines run. So the fossil fuel burning engines in our cars, light commercials, trucks, trains, planes, ships, and other land-based vehicles. So we are a significant contributor to the global issue of CO2 emissions. There is no question, both from our own manufacturing, but also from the end use of the products that we bring to market. So that means we have a remarkable responsibility as well. And it's in the last 10 years, I think, that the Bosch Group has awoken to that responsibility. Maybe a little bit earlier than some companies, but still perhaps a little too late in the minds of others. So our strategic positioning statement is one that guides a lot of what we do. We say we want to develop products that are invented for life. And by that, we mean we want them to fascinate and improve the quality of life and help conserve natural resources. So even in our positioning statement, which is attached to our brand and most of our advertising, Invented for Life appears. It guides us in what we do. The company has had, obviously, a set of values for a long time, But they've also been recently reframed. What we used to say in one of those values is we act responsibly in the interests of our company, also taking the social and ecological impact of our actions into consideration. That was reframed a couple of years ago with new wording that says we act prudently and responsibly for the benefit of society and the environment. So now we're taking much more of an active stance about our responsibility, where previously it was quite passive. That's seen us over the last years go through a product lifecycle assessment on already 75% of our products, looking at how the manufacturing through to supply, through to end use and afterlife recycling or disposal affects the environmental outcomes. And by now, more than 60% of our revenue is coming from products that have been through that life cycle assessment, where we understand it in much more detail. There are four big topics facing our company at the moment. All of them have a direct link to the environment. We see a shift from fossil fuel powered engines to electrified. Bear in mind, for 136 years, we've been making parts for the internal combustion engine. We already see the horizon where the internal combustion engine will literally become extinct and will be no longer able to be supplied into many of the end uses that we are typically supplying components for today. Motor vehicles, within 10 years, it will be impossible to sell with internal combustion engines, new vehicles. Similarly, we'll see stationary energy generation change away from fossil fuels. We've got 80,000 people working in our powertrain division. This shift to electrification means that we will need to divest ourselves, downsize that part of our business to a meager 8,000 people, because what we will make for an electrified future is much simpler and much easier to produce than the complex many elements of internal combustion engine. So a massive shift in our business required to adopt to that change to electrification. We're also seeing massive shifts to automation and to automated driving. Both of those things reducing energy consumption and also changing the landscape for our business. The application of the Internet of Things, where literally every electronic controlled device will be connectable, and increasingly will have artificial intelligence either embedded in its operation or used in its design and manufacture, will have a key impact on our environmental footprint as well. And then, of course, everything we do is now being framed around how do we get a more sustainable outcome. It was interesting. In preparation for today's seminar, I went back to our annual report and I discovered that our annual report is now smaller than our sustainability report. 200 pages of content about our global activities in the sustainability report, whereas we have an annual report which is less than 100 pages these days. Gives an idea that the emphasis is now shifting more to how we have a sustainable future than just a profitable future. A couple of things I wanted to stress. The Bosch Group, because it has such an ecological impact and such an impact in terms of CO2 emissions at end use, has to take more responsibility than perhaps other firms do. Burning fossil fuels in a car that is operated by a Bosch engine management system means we're on the hook to make them more efficient, to reduce fuel consumption, to reduce the emissions. We've been working on that for decades, and that work will never stop, despite the transition to electrified powertrains. We actually believe there is a place for the internal combustion in the future, but it has to be one that is climate neutral. So we are working not only on hydrogen fuel cells, hydrogen fuel as a replacement for gasoline and diesel, not only on a shift to electrification, but we're also trying to find a way where we can improve the emissions of those vehicles that will remain on our roads for the next decades. Bear in mind, around the globe, there are 1 billion or so internal combustion engines that will be with us for decades to come. If we do nothing to focus on the emissions from them, we're missing a very large part of the emissions puzzle. So we're focused on bringing to market technology that allows those internal combustion engines to run on climate neutral synthetic fuels as an opportunity to do something about the in-field emissions. We're also focused very heavily on electrification in all of our businesses, making sure that anything which consumes fossil fuels today, there is an electric alternative. And those electric alternatives also become far more energy efficient over time. So that's in our product portfolio. You'll be interested to know that already at the end of 2020, the Bosch Group was climate neutral at Scope 2 emissions, the largest industrial company and the first to achieve that. And that's been done by adopting and applying all the levers that you'd expect. We looked internally at our operations where we can improve energy efficiency, upgrading plant, equipment, compressed air systems, HVAC systems. We looked at how we can make our manufacturing operations run with less energy consumption. We looked at how we can make our buildings more energy efficient. So we got to a level of efficiency that helped reduce the emissions. We then looked at where we could install renewable energy. So on most of our sites around the globe, we now have covered to the extent possible the roofs with solar panels. Also here in Clayton, we have a system with 1 megawatt peak that delivers about 18% of our site energy requirements. But beyond that, we've also looked at gas applications, and where possible, we've discontinued those in favor of electric. And where we cannot reduce the emissions or add our own renewable, we have started buying only green energy for those remaining electrical requirements that we can't satisfy any other way. Beyond that, when we get into the non-electrical appliances, we buy carbon offsets. And that's how the Bosch Group, by the end of 2020, through those levers, that mix was able to be carbon neutral. Our aim is by 2030 to reduce our Scope 3 emissions by 15%. It sounds low, but when you consider that 95% of the CO2 emissions that we are responsible for are in Scope 3, not Scope 1 and Scope 2, you get an idea about the complexity of the task at hand. We sell electrical appliances to you as consumers that go in your houses that will be there for 10 years. And unless you do something in the way of a shift to green energy or changing the appliance to one which is more energy efficient, then we still have the challenge of how do we mitigate those emissions at Scope 3. Similarly, with internal combustion engines, everything we supply that has a car on the road for decades falls into our Scope 3 emissions calculation as well. So we have a lot to do. Locally, we're a manufacturer, we're an engineering company, and we're an importer and reseller of components and appliances, power tools, and everything else that comes out of the Bosch Group. We also in Australia achieved CO2 neutrality at the end of 2020 as part of the Bosch Global Initiatives. And I'm proud to say that we actually lead in some respects. We are the only place in the world that Bosch makes power diodes. We have a 20% global market share, and our factory achieved 0 CO2 from that manufacturing process. 75% of our waste streams go to recycling, and we have won 2 sustainability awards. The most recent one from the Premier of Victoria for copper reclamation out of one of our manufacturing processes, where lots of heavy metals going into water can now be extracted, recycled, and that copper gets sold back into industry. So we're doing a lot here locally as well. But that's my 10 minutes. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you. Very quickly, Gavin, you said products invented for life. So obviously, better product design is important to enable, circularity and product stewardship. Very briefly, where can companies that are starting this journey and not, hot on the product design side, where can they go for support and help?
Well, Google is an incredible reference, as you know. If any of you typed in design for environment, you'll find that there are policies, procedures, standards and approaches, best practices, everything that you could possibly want to find is in the public domain that will give you an easy start. But clearly, there are also organizations that can help you on that journey as well with consulting support and advice. We have our own internal consulting group, Amric, that we use in our business. I don't believe that that's available to external parties at the moment, but it is something that we are considering.
Thank you so much, Gavin. There might be other questions, and we'll come back to you towards the end of this seminar. I want to go to Steve Morris now to present his 10 minutes talk. Steve, as I said before, is the founder of Close the Loop. And Steve, over to you. Here's your first slide. Hello, Steve.
I know, I've fallen for it.
Thank you.
Just to get us underway, I thought I'd break the ice there. Hey, good morning, everyone, and thanks a lot, Emric. Gavin, good to follow you, and I certainly hope the Bosch drivetrain on my e-mountain bike lasts forever, mate. That'll be wonderful. It's a great bike. I'm gonna take a cog and look at things like motivation and the journey so far, and what inspires me along this journey for my sharing this morning. And if we take a look at a couple of pictures, I've got a lot of pictures, probably because I'm not as comfortable to show my face as Gav, but here we go. There's some images there of great interest. In 1998, we were on an environment section in The Age, which showed how I'd been able to make a chair from recycled inkjet cartridges that were collected from RMIT University back in the day. So that sort of helps to set the stage for my theme today, which is, your customer. And starting the journey as being part of the circular economy, in my opinion, needs to be a customer-focused journey, because we need to be economically viable while we are transitioning to circularity. My motivation, the image of Earth from outer space. As soon as I saw that image, not even sure what year we started to get these wonderful images of Earth from outer space, but the realization that our planet has finite resources, and that we are using up this year's quota of those finite resources by halfway through the year, is a shocking reality that I can't live with unless I'm part of the solution. So Close the Loop has become part of the solution. Very lucky in the early days to be working with progressive companies like Ricoh, for example, who in 1994 developed their Comet Circle, which looks remarkably like the Ellen MacArthur Foundation diagram for a circular economy. So I hope those new to the circular economy are starting to get the feeling that there's nothing new about the circular economy. It's just, the word circular economy has come to the fore, which is great. I love it. Next slide, please. Emric.
Yep.
So there's only 5 slides this morning.
Yep.
And the next slide gives you a bit of an idea of what Close the Loop is all about. We started as our core business as collecting and recycling imaging consumables. And that started in a small factory in Thomastown, serving a couple of Victorian universities. We've now grown to be the largest collector and recycler of imaging supplies in the world, with a big facility in northern Kentucky in the USA, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Close the Loop in Australia, and also a division in Belgium in Europe. And I can say, going back to my theme of customers, the reason that we were able to duplicate our model so successfully into the USA was because we have the same customers who are encouraging us to bring the innovative technologies to recover the resources from this complex waste stream into the North American market as well. So we've worked with HP, Xerox, Lexmark, Brother, Toshiba, Panasonic, Konica Minolta, and all of these big companies for many years, providing circular economy services that are of interest to them, not us, to understand their needs, not ours. Next one, please, mate. Thanks, Emric. One of the products, one of the things for my sins that was a foundation brand promise of Close the Loop was zero waste to landfill. You hear it a lot these days, but back when the company started over 20 years ago, it was not common. It was naive and a little bit stupid, and we ended up with some above ground landfills for a while along the way. But I can put my hand on my heart and say that we've been independent independently audited since day one and have not put a kilogram of cartridge waste into landfill. One of our latest products to help keep up with the pace of these raw materials that we produce is called Tonoplast, and it's made from waste toner powder and waste mixed soft plastics, developed right here in Melbourne, patented around the world, and it improves the performance of asphalt while using these problematic waste streams. Toner powder is actually polymers, copolymers of polystyrene and also polyesters. These images give you a bit of a feel for the process flow. The finished product ends up at an asphalt plant where it is dry mixed with asphalt and then laid on roads. And any of you in Victoria may have already driven on a Tonoplast road. We've laid thousands of kilometres of council roads, but now also the latest section of the M80 freeway in Melbourne and the Monash freeways have both been laid using Tonoplast. So we have very big things to come. Next slide, please, Amrit. Part of our growth is what I call a circular integration. So recently, well, over the last 5 or 6 years, we've been looking at an exit strategy to give relief to some of our long-suffering shareholders who have supported Close the Loop for many, many years. And we started as an unlisted public company, so we had the structure in place, and most recently have merged with a brilliant packaging company called OF Pack. That merged entity has recently listed on the Australian Stock Exchange under the ticker code CLG. If you're interested to follow our progress, we are what we say is probably the first pure circular economy company to list on the Australian Stock Exchange. And despite the turbulence at the moment, we are going very, very, very well. We hit all of our numbers in the first reporting period since we listed in November. And, you know, we're on track to do the same again next reporting period. So last slide, please, Amrit. Thank you so much. And I just wanted to explain that the journey for us does continue. The journey for us is diversification. We're now collecting and recycling batteries, electronics products, cosmetics. We've partnered with Estee Lauder for 10 years now, and we're growing that side of our business. And also looking at textiles, not in it yet, but looking at opportunities to assist in the circular economy of textiles, particularly the polymers, the polyesters, etc., and power tools and others. So in conclusion, I would like to say that collaboration in the circular economy is a real thing. And I believe anyway that the key to rapid success is to collaborate up and down your supply chain. Find out, if you don't realise what your strengths as a company are, make sure you get that really clear first, then leverage those strengths to assist other companies in the supply chain. And then I believe the opportunities start to grow. I could continue. I will stick around for the questions. Amrit, I'll see if I can keep us on track. I think that's about right. So thanks again for the opportunity. Talk soon, everyone.
Thank you very much, Steve. We'll go straight on to Angela Stubbs from the City of Kingston. Angela, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thanks, Amrit. And hi, Steve. And thank you so much for that last note around collaboration, because that's a lot of what I will be emphasising. So just to get started, my role is a business officer in Kingston Council's business team. But before I start telling you what the council role is in the circular economy, just to go into a little bit of background, I grew up on the shop floor of a manufacturing business in Chelsea. My father was a manufacturer. So for the first 30 years of my life, I was aware of the ins and outs of manufacturing. And then I went into my own businesses, 3 very different businesses, before I joined Kingston Council in 2010. And during all of that time that I was in business, I never thought to go to the council, the local council, for any business information to help my business grow. I tended to think that council was around planning and permits. And now I have a very different view. So Amrit, if you could just go on to the next slide. So in 2015, having spent 5 years in council, I had built a lot of relationships with business, but I was noticing that after the GFC, costs were impacting, and we were really trying to assist businesses with something that would help reduce their costs. Landfill levies were going up. So I worked on a project, which I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because I know Cameron Mckenzie is going to tell you all about, Aspire, but it was a great way of taking the first step in our circular journey and our education with our businesses. 2019, I worked with KPMG on a Circular Advantage program, which I'll talk a bit more about soon. 2020 kind of diverted our plans to deliver that program, but in actual fact, the good that came out of COVID was that we used technology to deliver that program, and it meant that we had collaboration online, we had peer-to-peer mentoring, which we would never have had happen between two different councils on the other side of Melbourne. We had Hume on one side and Kingston on the other. And the advantages that came out of that were that they were able to log on for an hour every week and share their business development. So now in 2021, there has been another Circular Advantage program run, and 2022, we're starting on the journey of working with Monash and the kind of business awareness raising around the circular economy program. Each council has pretty much now committed to a climate change emergency response, and that has really helped to drive the circular economy because the actions that fall out of those council plans will take us forward. Thanks, Emmerich. If you could just change the slide. So for Aspire, it is a software platform that reduces waste going to landfill, but it also optimizes resources. So the inputs and the outputs, I'll leave for Cameron to go into more detail, but if you don't know about Aspire and you haven't seen it before, it's definitely something to look at. So on to the next slide. Thank you, Emmerich. So the Circular Advantage was really taking businesses on the first step to working into a circular economy. KPMG was the company that actually had Professor Scott Valentine, who's world renowned for the circular economy. And so we engaged with him and formed a partnership with Hume. 22 businesses were enrolled in that program, from small businesses to large like Simplot and Nestle. Their journey involved, if you can go to the next slide, thank you. It was really around first looking at resource optimization. So some quick wins, what could they actually, reduce in their waste, but also look at their inputs and their outputs and their whole business model. Looking at their process efficiency, and that meant holistically their people, their facilities, their design of their product, and really taking a bird's eye view of their business. What we found was that at the end of the 6 months of coming into the program for an hour a week, but doing some work in between, there was a real shift in the thinking of those 22 businesses. Some of them completely turned their business model on its head and realised they could be going into the future with a different, either a service model or a different product. This is just some of the results that came out that, was council part of the vehicle that took them into the circular economy? And it certainly was, because we are the conduit for the information and we can set the scene for connecting businesses with each other. Just on that next slide, I think it's got really around the role I want to emphasise that council plays, that your business team is there really as an advocate for you, as an ambassador, to be able to connect you, particularly with other businesses. And this became very evident after the pandemic, that we could not really rely on global supply chains. And through running programs like the Circular Advantage and like the program that Monash Uni plans to escalate, there is the opportunity to work locally together and collaborate, and particularly around that supply chain, and trying to really support the viability of the businesses in our region and support jobs and create new jobs. So this is part of what Council now is working with, brought on board a zero emissions officer who works alongside the work that I do. But my role is really about connecting businesses with each other and connecting them with the resources, whether it's in R&D, academia, or just really being able to be innovative with entrepreneurs. It's the connections that you can make that you don't have to go out and find yourself. So I really just wanted to emphasise that your council business team can be part of your team and work for you to help your business grow. Thank you, Amrik.
Thank you very much, Angela. You emphasized connecting with the supply chains. I guess you're referring both connecting upstream and downstream. Do you give any importance to whether you start first upstream or downstream?
Look, I think it's a pretty holistic approach. You're looking at reducing your costs, but you're also looking at those optimization possibilities. So because of the pandemic, we found that so many businesses were affected by not being able to continue business as usual. So they had to start looking at other options. So it really goes hand in hand with just finding where the savings can be and where the new business opportunities are.
Can you talk a little bit about the teams that your council and other councils are establishing to support businesses locally with their circular economy journey?
Yes, well, it starts probably with either call it economic development team or a business team. We work closely with the environment team, the waste team, and then the overarching council policies around climate change are the ones that are definitely getting us further ahead on the circular journey. But unless you have relationships with businesses that you can go and do site visits, you can connect them with other businesses, you don't get a lot of traction. And we need in councils to market ourselves better to be able for businesses to know who we are and what we can do. And it's not that we have so much of the knowledge, but we have the connections to the knowledge. And so I think it's just being able to understand that in reaching out to get more information about circular economy, plug in your council business teams, because they do work quite holistically across the council. And it's not so much around compliance, it's more around the information that is necessary to take you on that journey.
Thank you very much, Angela. And we'll move on to Cameron Mckenzie, the CEO of Aspire. Cameron, are you there?
Yes, I'm here and waiting.
Over to you, Cameron. You don't have any slides to share, but please go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. I was thinking more along the lines of Steve and Graham. So we'll talk more about presenting about Aspire and talking about it rather than sitting there going through a series of slides. I'll just try to think that basically what I can do is I can send a link to Aspire and the website into the chat, and from there you can have a look at some of the things that we do and how the platform works. I'll send a link to a set of tutorials so it gives you the process map, but I don't think I'm here right now to really like drum Aspire into everyone's sort of minds, as you know, Anne's has spoken pretty highly about it and what we've done before in the past. But what I really want to, sort of help you guys with and just sort of express information around, the transition and the theme of taking that first step towards circular. And another thing, it's all about for businesses when on their transition to go circular is to look at LGAs, like what Ange was saying, is like they're the perfect transition to help the businesses go circular. They're great when it comes to the connections of, connecting businesses and opportunities along with local governments. And as I'll just go back and recap on something that Steve said about things around circular economies. It's nothing really new. Like a lot of businesses for many of years have been working in circular solutions, but I think the whole idea of the circular economy and that principle, obviously, it's pretty new these days. And what we want to do is, help these businesses really have a look, take a step back and look at their transition and see how they can do it. Another kudos to Steve and the team is basically, close the loop, going listing. It's one of the first circular economy organisations I've seen that's actually, listed. And it's a very proud moment. It's actually, hands off to you, Steve, because, it's actually bringing a lot of visibility to what you're doing as an organisation and how businesses can make that shift. It's a feasible opportunity for everyone to do it. And when it comes back to businesses, to make that transition, it's all about making those small steps and make those small measured steps. Last week, I was at our Sustainable Leaders Summit, which was at the RACV Club, where you spoke to all Australia's leading sustainable managers, sustainability COOs and all the above. And, it all comes down to, bringing those businesses back to collaboration and working in unison to work towards these common goals. I think that's some of the main elements. What you really, really need to do is to, not trying to do things by yourself, but obviously work in collaboration, which looking at the calibre of the people on this call and in the chat function, we can sort of see that basically everyone's got a fair idea of what needs to be done. It's all about working together, which again, which is key. You go back and have a look around that collaboration key again, and you look at the people from organisations like SEMMA and what they've been doing over the last few years. South East Melbourne Manufacturers Association have been around for a very long time, and they've been a big supporter of Aspire, as I can actually see how Aspire can be that collaboration tool to help these businesses work together. Moving in towards, the digital world coming out of COVID, a lot of organisations, they were sort of forced to make that digital shift over the last couple of years. And I know myself watching businesses, from a very, using majority of their days working in their business. Now they've had the opportunity because they're, some of them are at home to work on it and look at digital solutions to sort of help them towards their sustainable journeys. Really makes a difference. I'm actually going back and just talking about Aspire for a small moment is basically what we do is, we're a digital tool to help businesses move on the way circular. We do elements of reporting and measuring of businesses' transition towards circular. We measure scope 3 carbon emissions. So when it comes to these big organisations, when they hit these big audacious 2030 net zero goals, which it really needs to be done, we're helping businesses from your small mum and dads up to you big multinationals, your big utilities to make that shift. So it's getting more and more recognised on how to make that shift and the importance around it. And I think as sort of, I know Steve and Ange can talk about this quite highly regarding, the tracking and traceability of these resources that goes through the circular economies is really critical for organisations moving forward. And how do you actually measure what they need to do? Because if you can't measure it, how can you manage it? So, that's some of the really important points we really need to really focus down on. And, it's a great opportunity, I think, for organisations to start making that shift circular. I know for myself, and I know Ange, I've spoken to Ange about this, but, in less than 48 hours, we're about to launch a series, the platform Aspire in Hong Kong, an international market. We've been working on that for the last 2 years. So, so that actually, brings, it sheds a lot of good and positive light on how organisations from big utilities, big major corporations, how they want to make that shift circular. to all these businesses that, originally, made this shift back in the day when CSIRO and Data61 used to manage Aspire. But end of the day, it all comes back to these fundamental business decisions of collaboration and working together, and looking to make smarter business decisions and making these smaller measured steps rather than these big giant unmeasured leaps. So what I'll do after this is I'll put a couple of links in the chat to our website and to our tutorial page, so you can have a bit of a look, and if you've got any questions, feel free to reach out and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Steve. One of the questions that were asked by one of our participants was, how have you measured the success of the Aspire program? And overall, what have you learned through that experience?
Oh, good question. Well, one of the key things that we used to measure it, obviously, is for growth is probably the ultimate one. I know basically when we got Aspire from CSIRO and Data61, I think there was about 150 businesses. I think we got well over 1,000 now. I think it's probably close to 1,100 with almost 1,500 actual users using the platform. So again, that's sort of measuring that shift and what the people want to do. But also too, like one of the foundations or fundamental KPIs that we use at Aspire is transactions, right? And tonnages. The more tonnages we get, the more transactions the more that we can see what resources are shifting and going through the platform. And it's also watching, the chain of custody and seeing where the opportunity arises and where it finishes. So basically where the item starts, what industry, and what industry it goes to and what area. So we can check with that information, and we can actually analyze that data, which is quite it's quite a success. Like I'll give you a case study. One's actually quite new. It's only maybe a couple of months old. We had an LGA that joined out west, and we had another business that joined under their own steam. And I think in the one transaction they transacted, I think it was 20,000 tonnes of organic products, which the savings to the supply demand in the LGA were about $55,000. So that's some of the opportunity there just from one exchange. So, it's all about taking those small first steps and making it together as a group and coming to one place like Aspire and collaborating around that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Steve. Next on the speaker list is Sandra George, who's the manager of the Southeast Business Networks and sits on the board of the Southeast Melbourne Manufacturers Alliance. Sandra, can you hear me? Hello, Sandra.
Sorry, I did the same thing as Steve did. Thank you, Amric, and good morning, everyone. As Amric said, I manage City of Greater Dandenong's Southeast Business Networks. It is part of City Greater Dandenong. It's widely known as SEBN. I can really support everything that's been said here this morning, and also make comment that Dandenong Council is also part of the climate change emergency group, and but it's also well recognised for its support of business and industry, and at the same time, I guess, acknowledging that there's considerable scope for both council and all of us to increase our awareness of the CE. From SEBN's perspective, I guess we've been involved in the manufacturing sector for 3 decades now. And if there's one thing that drives manufacturers across the Southeast region, and probably everywhere, is that constant search for ways to do things more effectively. Doesn't matter whether it's designing out, whether it's training, whether it's employee management, whether it's process improvement, and always on the lookout for new ideas and methods. And we've been bringing businesses together. I guess what you would call the feet on the ground with support to share information, share success, challenges and models for action, and this topic really is no exception. Over the years, we've enabled a lot, probably thousands of companies, to learn from some of the brightest minds, both here and across the globe. I know Gavin's spoken to our groups before, and many others. And one of the first people we worked with was Ian Young on this particular topic. Many years ago, he would be known to a number of you. And that started with reduce, reuse and recycle. And I guess in a lot of ways, that together with lean, which we also started with companies, taking them on that journey of lean back in 2000, 2001. And really, they're all the beginnings of what we're now looking at as the circular economy. It's all about reduction in your materials usage, better designing out. A lot of, reduced cost, of course, is often the key driver for most companies. And that's where we have been playing a fairly strong role. And I'd arguably sort of leading the way in many cases, supporting manufacturers on their respective journeys, irrespective of whatever the economic conditions have been. We've had a strong focus on waste management. And as I said, have started in that lean space and then moved through to, as Cameron suggested earlier, they started with CSIRO, that project, and we were part of that initial project with CSIRO and also with Kingston and others. And we're delighted to continue to be involved in that initiative and in others around the circular economy. And it's good to see that it is gaining traction, I guess, across a lot of stakeholders, variety of stakeholders. I guess where SEBN is a City of Greater Dandenong initiative, I'm also on the board of SEMMA, that was mentioned a moment ago, South East Melbourne Manufacturers Alliance. And I'm representing its CEO, Vonda Fenwick, who was unable to be with us today. And yes, they too have been working on the circular economy. But they started out as emerging out of a need for a more effective lobbying voice on behalf of manufacturers. So where SEBN is about getting people capable and, helping them on their journeys and supporting them on their journey to better business in general, in all its forms. SEMMA was created back in 2001 to be that lobbying voice and to be able to bring opportunities to the table. So it's manufacturing members, it's quite a unique association across the region. Its manufacturing members employ more than 15,000 employees, the combined turnover in excess of 3 billion. Their members have an intimate connection to the issue of waste and waste management and the need for an effective circular economy, given the production of, steel, fabric, timbers, electronics and other forms of waste. Every manufacturer understands that waste minimisation has a positive impact on the bottom line. And that's really the what gets people motivated generally. And many SEMMA members understand that there are further opportunities in the circular economy that to date have been difficult to realise, but I think the time is right. What we might have started back in 2000 and, dragging people along. We did many projects with Sustainability Victoria in that time. And it was very hard to get people to the table. But I think now there's a much greater awareness. As Gavin said earlier, the whole life cycle element is far more popular today. And it's essential. Ian Young talked very much about planet Earth, and that's going back a long time. And I think that's now coming to the fore, and we recognise that, planet Earth is probably in much danger across a lot of areas. So the circular economy and reducing waste to landfill, getting the full life cycle product just makes common sense. So both SEMMA and SEBN look forward to seeing this program and model provide yet another step for manufacturers across Melbourne and hopefully across Australia as well. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Sandra. I'll move to Travis Hatton from Sustainability Victoria. Travis, are you there? And can everybody see my screen, share my shared screen?
I am here and I can see your screen, Emmerich.
Okay, over to you, Travis.
Awesome. Did you have some slides available, Emmerich?
Yes, here we are.
Awesome. So as a quick introduction, my name's Travis Hatton. I work for a state government agency called Sustainability Victoria. I'm currently co-leading a program called the, wait for it, the Circular Economy Business Innovation Centre, which does sound like a pun from the TV show Utopia, but it's actually a great program providing direct support for businesses that are wanting to become more circular. So as Angela mentioned earlier, local government has a really strong role in supporting businesses to become more sustainable. Like local government, the state and also the Commonwealth governments play a really critical role in supporting businesses too. So we often do this through different levers, including policy, regulation and funding. So today I wanted to take you through how the state government can directly support your next steps in the circular economy. And I'll provide a little bit of background into the policy and the programs that are enabling circular economy in Victoria. So on this slide, first up, who are we? So Sustainability Victoria is a government agency. We're here to accelerate Victoria's transition to a circular, climate resilient, clean economy. We really provide support in a couple of different ways. So investment and innovation through behaviour change and education and through community action. They're really the three pillars that we work under. For me, my focus is really working with businesses through the CVIC to support innovation by providing direct investment out to businesses so they can either develop or implement new circular economy initiatives within the Victorian business landscape. We're currently delivering around 18 programs under a policy called Recycling Victoria, which I'll mention just on the next slide, please, Emmerich. So Recycling Victoria is effectively the state government's circular economy policy. It's a $500 million commitment with 4 big targets around helping Victoria measure and act towards creating a circular economy. So some of the language that you've heard today really links into what this policy is about. So the 4 key things that we're trying to achieve through this policy over the next 10 years is diverting 80% of waste away from landfill, cutting total waste generation by 15%, which means actually avoiding waste. And in a manufacturing perspective, that's really looking at things like materials efficiency or how we can design things better so we can reduce waste all along our supply and value chains. We're also looking at halving the volume of organic material going to landfill and ensuring that every Victorian household has access to food and garden organic waste recycling services. We also have another commitment to halving the volume of food waste that's generated by 2030, which links in with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 12.3. And for Victorian manufacturing industry, that's really important that we support food manufacturers to achieve that goal because food manufacturers do have such a critical role to play in reducing food waste. I'll jump to the next slide. So in terms of how we provide support, the program that I co-lead is the CVIC, or the Circular Economy Business Innovation Centre. We're really a hub for Victoria's transition to a circular economy. What we do, we provide events, workshops, funding. We have around $13 million of funding for businesses. We provide networking, collaboration, research and information, and we host all of that on our virtual hub, which is the CVIC website. So you can come visit us online at cvic.vic.gov.au, and I'll have some slides at the end of the deck if you did want to kind of explore a little bit more. So in terms of why we're here today, you know, we're really happy to be supporting Monash and SEMMA in their kind of project. We're supporting them through a grant so they can bring their knowledge and expertise and run a series of workshops and engagements with the Southeast Melbourne manufacturing industry to help you become more circular, to look at exploring what opportunities exist specifically for you in the circular economy so that you can take advantage of all those great circular economy benefits like reducing waste to landfill, you know, growing revenue streams through new circular economy business models and practices. The kind of business models that we're hoping to support through our fund more broadly and also through this program include things like, product life extension models, sharing models and platforms, product as a service, where, a great example of that is providing lighting as a service rather than a light bulb itself. So you might go out there, or you may be a manufacturer that produces light bulbs, and instead of selling a light bulb directly, you might supply the service of lighting to a business. And in turn, the benefit of doing that is that you're going to be providing high quality light globes that last longer. You'll be maintaining those services and ultimately reducing waste through that product. So there's a variety of different things that we're doing in that way in terms of supporting business models. And then we're also supporting business practices. Business practices are things like waste avoidance, materials efficiency, things that you can do within your business to become more circular, but not necessarily be immediately a completely circular business model. Now, to set you up for success, this is a really quick conversation, but the CBIC is here to support you. Monash is also here to support you, and we'll be running a series of workshops. So the best thing that you can do if you wanted to find out more about what funding is available for you, like I mentioned, we have about $13 million of funding. We also have a range of different funding programs across Sustainability Victoria, about $200 million all up. If Amric sends these slides later on, I'll recommend you going to sustainability.vic, looking at our grants and funding page and signing up to the grants and funding alert. You can also come and meet the CBIC team. We have open office hours, which is done virtually Monday to Friday. You can book something online, and a link's provided here for a quick 15 to 20 minute discussion, just to introduce yourself, maybe ask a question, find out about the circular economy and how to get involved. And you can also join the upcoming Monash University project, which Amric can talk to you about a little bit more. And that project is really focused on providing you some direct support to start exploring and developing those ideas that are going to enable you to become more circular. So that's it from me today, just a really quick glance into Sustainability Vic, but here to talk if you ever do want to have a chat.
Thank you very much, Travis. Just very quickly, the research that you mentioned we're doing here at Monash University, funded by Sustainability Victoria and Monash Business School. As part of that, there's a survey and interviews. Sorry, there's a spelling error there. We've done a survey and 25 interviews with the businesses that are transitioning to a circular economy. That was phase 1. In phase 2 and 3, we'll be holding a series of workshops and seminars. We're focusing on 4 different sectors: general engineering, manufacturing, textiles, plastics, and food. So look out for announcements for these seminars and workshops. If you'd like more information, please contact me. There's my phone number and my email address. Thank you so much for your, very quickly before we leave, any comments from our presenters on setting up the measurement systems to measure environmental and social benefits of circular economy? That's the last question for this session. Anybody like to take that question? Maybe Steve, your experience over 25 years. How do we?
Yeah, Amric, I would like to make a quick comment on that, and that is that anybody who's claiming circularity in their business needs facts to back up, and data is only factual in a circular economy world if it's verified, and verified data can come in many forms, but it needs collaboration along the supply chain. In order to share data, it's a different mindset. There's a different level of trust and emotional intelligence needed than the old traditional competitive model where data was kept close to one's chest. So all I can say is that data is king in validating claims of circularity. Maybe Cam has something else to add to that.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Well, you're exactly right. Like, obviously, data is key, and it's all about collaborating and double checking or assessing your data against other people's data. Is a good way of getting back to it and working out exactly how to get back to measure that circularity. But obviously, there's the environmental and there's the social aspects of circular economy that need to be measured. One of the things that we do is we obviously measure Scope 3 emissions, and we have a third party that comes in and verifies what we do. So we use an organisation called SGS, which is a global verification certification organisation that verify what we do. So, you know, they correlate a lot of our data, and they, you know, and they double check it and triple check it to make sure it's correct. You know, and we also use another element when it comes to our data correlation is basically we use a third party that creates that we use. We pull an a data set from when it comes to the embodied carbon LCA measurement tool. So basically, yeah, all the measurements that we pull and we measure through Aspire, we've got IP around the calculations around that. But obviously, when that fundamental data comes from a third party, so again, it's all about collaboration and using other people's information to create something that we use. But in the element of time, has anyone got any issues they can or questions they can send me an email?
Thank you very much, Cameron. Can I thank all the other presenters today? Gavin Smith, Cameron, yourself, Steve Morris, Angela Stubbs, Sandra George, and Travis Hatton from Sustainability Victoria. Contact Travis or myself to learn more about the work that we're doing, and look forward to your participation in our further workshops and seminars. Thank you all, and have a good day.